There is an annual award awarded to a community champion in BC, and it is named after a dear friend of many here that we remember fondly, John Webb, and it is named after John Webb, and it is the John Webb Community Champion Award. And so we have the honor of passing that along to a new winner each year.
It gives me great pleasure to announce this year's winner of the John Webb Award, Peter Brandt.
Now you have to hold it there for a few minutes.
Wow, what a day. I do have a few words because my feeling is we're here to celebrate the success of First Voices, actually. And there are a lot of amazing, wonderful people who've been a part of that success. I'm going to ask you to be patient for just a few minutes so that we can pay tribute to some of the amazing people that are part of the history of First Voices. I'd like to start by saying a very, very heartfelt Heitzgesiem. Thank you, respected ones, to the Coast Salish people whose territory we're sitting on and who have invited us back again and again for this important gathering. It's a great pleasure for me to accept the John Webb Award on behalf of the many talented people whose passion, intellect and commitment have contributed to the original First Voices vision. Together we've found innovative ways to use evolving technologies to document the oral traditions of First Nations people. We've shared the desire to ensure that our rich linguistic heritage is secure and accessible for future generations of First Nations people and, in fact, for all humanity. My journey into the world of Indigenous languages and cultures began 40 years ago in the Australian outback. As the teacher in charge of a tiny Aboriginal school, I had the great privilege and pleasure of teaching 30 Warramungu children, ranging in age from 4 to 16. Those delightful kids taught me some important life lessons. Most importantly, to make the best of what you have. They could make a shelter from a few slabs of wood, a toy truck from an apple crate, a few tobacco tins and some fencing wire, and a delicious meal out of a lizard or a cockatoo. Those lessons came in handy 20 years later when we set out to network the Tsleil-Waututh Tribal School on Vancouver Island. We received a quote for the job of $10,000. But of course we had no budget for such a job. But by using the Warramungu method of making do, we completed the job for $385, 2 chocolate bars, and 2 cans of pop. The $385 bought us a coil of that blue Cat 5 Ethernet cable. We crawled around on our bellies under the school for the entire spring break, laying out that cable. The chocolate bars and pop we paid to 2 brave students who just happened to be walking by at the right time. Because this crawl space was too narrow for me to squeeze into, I convinced those 2 kids to crawl on their bellies under the entire portable to get that cable. In some ways, the entire First Voices story has been just that way. Always under-resourced, or not resourced at all. And always making the very best we could of the little that we could cobble together. Fortunately, the greatest resource of all is an amazing team of people. I would therefore like to dedicate the award to the many who've made such invaluable contributions and have given First Voices a life of its own. I ask your patience for a few minutes while I tell you a little bit about those people. First and most importantly, to the elders and language champions who've maintained their languages for thousands of years in the face of numerous pressures. Their willingness to embrace modern technologies continues a tradition of resilience, pride, and determination to keep their languages strong for future generations. Without their ongoing community-based language work, First Voices would be nothing but an empty shell. I once paid a special tribute to my wife Penny, who's with us here tonight, and my sons Josh and Aiden. Thank you for your unconditional love and ongoing support, which have enabled me to devote much time and energy to my work, often at your expense. You've cheered each of our small victories on the First Voices journey, and I'm delighted that you're here tonight to share with us. I also want to acknowledge my mother-in-law, Penny's mom is here, Pat, and her sister, and just walked in, my nephew, Fraser. Thank you all. I want to honor First Voices co-visionary, Dr. John Elliott, who's with us here at the First Voices table. Stokewith, from our 11 years as colleagues at the Claremont Travel School. Beginning in 1990, all the way to today, a period of 22 years, you've always been the most tireless of language champions. I'm honored to call you one of my dearest friends and to share this award with you. Heights Casino. To Angus Brandon, the 17-year-old Australian high school student who through over 70 emails collaborated with John and me through the development of our first language software program, Vocab Language Lab. John and I are grateful to this day for Angus's mentorship, which was so vital to the early evolution of the First Voices concept. To John Webb, in whose honor this award is named, John was a great friend and supportive colleague from the mid-1990s. In the summer of 2001, John and I were discussing the early progress of First Voices development over a coffee in downtown Victoria, and he said, "There's something new coming down the pipe. It's called 802.11b. Remember that number, 802.11b. I said, "So what on earth's that?" He said, "It's wireless technology. Soon it's going to mean that we can sit here with our laptops in this cafe and get online." I said, "No way." He said, "Yeah, man, you heard it here first." And truly, I did hear it there first. In 2001, it's got to pinch ourselves to remember. That was the beginning of Wi-Fi as we know it today. I have a wonderful memory of a woman named Alice Johnson. We just found a little bit of videotape of her from 2001, the ICT conference in Vernon. And she's the woman from the Yukon, from Whitehorse in the Yukon, who stood up and said, "I noticed there's a few First Nations people here. If you'd maybe like to get together over lunch and we could talk about technology issues for First Nations." And so that lunchtime, 11 or 12 of us pulled our chairs into a circle and Sue Hanley was in that circle. Norm was in that circle. And I'm glad to say that I was in that circle. And when you look around this conference today, look what happened. It's pretty cool. In the year that we lost Steve Jobs, I think it's fitting to recognize the contribution that Apple's many innovative and intuitive products have made to the First Voices endeavor. From recording language on iMovie on the first generation of iMacs, to our launch this morning of the First Voices chat app. It's hard to imagine this journey without the help of Steve Jobs' vision and Apple's excellent, ever-evolving toolkit. To the First Peoples Cultural Foundation, which first went in search of cost-effective technologies to support language documentation in 2001. Simon Robinson, the executive director at that time, approached John Elliott and me at the tribal school to inquire about our concept for a web-based language documentation tool. And as they say, the rest is history. Shortly after that first meeting, John and I signed legal documents formally donating our intellectual property rights to the foundation to ensure that First Voices would be developed by First Nations, for First Nations, and would never be a for-profit venture. Shortly after that, First Peoples Heritage Language and Culture Council took on the day-to-day management of First Voices and the delivery of its services to Indigenous language champions. And thus began a fascinating adventure that has taken us to every corner of BC, across Canada, the USA, Japan, Australia, Africa, and China. That journey reached an exciting new level today with the launch of the First Voices chat out by our Lieutenant Governor, the Honourable Stephen Point, and Her Honour Gwen Point. Coincidentally, Her Honour was one of my earliest mentors in language revitalization when she managed the Stolo First Nations language program back in the 1990s. And this is not written down, but I just have to share this, this day has been certainly one of the highlights of my professional life. It's definitely the highlight of my professional life. But when we sat together in that little room upstairs, just coaching their honours through the use of that app, and we saw the joy on their faces, and we heard their almost childlike delight, that I'll never forget. Just amazing that they were so excited to be finally texting in Halkamela. I want to pay a really special tribute to Tracy Herbert, Executive Director of the First Peoples Heritage Language and Culture Council. Tracy's also the Treasurer of the First Peoples Cultural Foundation. For the past decade, it's Tracy who's had the courage and conviction to stand behind First Voices and surmount every financial, political, and technical challenge that we have confronted. Tracy has shared the vision to keep pace with technical innovations at every turn, to ensure that First Nations language technologies remain at the leading edge, and it's Tracy's expert leadership of a small, dedicated and hard-working staff at First Peoples Council that ensures our ongoing success. To Dr. Lana Williams. Dr. Williams is the chair of the First Peoples Council. She's the Canada Research Chair of Indigenous Knowledge and Learning at the University of Victoria, and the voice of great wisdom and integrity leading our organization. Lorna heads a board and advisory council of knowledgeable and committed First Nations leaders in the full range of First Peoples language initiatives, including Immersion, Master Apprentice, Language Nest, and a wide range of arts programs. And you all heard the passion in Lana's voice at our lunchtime gathering today as she described the work that we do there. To Alex Wadsworth, who's sitting next to Tracy, the First Peoples technical analyst who's anchored our technical endeavors since 2002. Alex is particularly well known and appreciated for his willingness to patiently assist our team and each of the community teams in sorting through the myriad of daily technical challenges. And you saw that in action today when we finally got that chat out. To Shay Beckler. Shay's sitting right over here. Shay's the First Voices coordinator and linguist, whose organizational and training talents keep our work on track. Shay's taken over most of the First Voices training and the extensive travel that make up such a large part of our work. I also wanted to tell you that Shay was teaching piano at age 12 to 22 students. She speaks 3 languages, English, French, and Spanish, and she's got little bits of many, many First Nations languages that she's building as well. So a remarkable assistant at First Voices. Also want to pay tribute to previous First Voices trainers, Pauline Edwards and Ivy Charlson, who made an important contribution during the first few years of First Voices. There was a man just sort of hiding in the background here today. His name's Dan Nevin. Dan is the technical lead and wizard behind the scenes working on these apps. He doesn't ever want his name mentioned. He doesn't want any kind of acknowledgement at all, but it's really important that we recognize that there are brilliant people working in the background on these types of projects. Outside the First Voices team, there's several people who have been long-time stalwarts of First Nations Technology Council and great supporters of all that we've tried to do at First Voices. Chief among those over the years is First Nations Technology Council Coordinator Sue Hanley. Sue has championed our work for years, and with Norm Leach, the ever-modest and effective Executive Director at FNTC, they've made such significant contributions to our success. The most recent being their decision not many weeks ago that they would find the means to fund the development of the First Voices chat app. So without them, we would not be here we would not have seen that today. Thank you, Sue, and thank you, Norm. There are many others who've had important roles of collaboration and inspiration. I want to mention a few of their names. Chief Bill Cranmer, Chief Ron Ignace, Jamie Starrett, Wilf Bangett, Maria Fukuchinecho, Philip Joie. I want to pay special tribute to Gareth Sherman, who presented me with the award today. Gareth was the chair of Victoria Freenet. He held a little board meeting for Victoria Freenet in the mid-90s, and I went along and didn't even know what I was getting into, and it turns out that this Freenet thing would let you get on the internet free and have email. And Gareth and his wife May were leading that, and then shortly after that they showed up into the school and said, if you guys need an internet connection, let us know. If you want a website, we can build you a little website. And they did that. They were, we didn't have a clue at that stage, and they were the first people to be leading the way on that, and we really appreciate that. Thank you, guys. Many thank you. I'll never forget that meeting. I did not have a clue about what the internet was, but look what happened. Also want to remember Paolo Asubio, Trevor Inkpen, and the past recipients of the John Webb Award, Arvo Kopel, Don Mackey, John Kerr, and Harry Adam, who we've all been working in these circles for the last decade. I do want to acknowledge that while we're always desperate for funding, we can never have enough, but we must remember that there has been funding to get us to this point that's come from the Department of Canadian Heritage, from the Province of British Columbia, from the New Relationship Trust, who, although we're always begging for money to enable all communities to fully document their languages, and we're never getting what we need, we do need to acknowledge that these are the people who have supported us. At First Voices, we recognize that technology tools can never replace the most valuable language resource of all, our fluent speakers. What I'm tremendously excited about is what we are witnessing at the community level as the next generation integrate language technology into their daily lives. On the Sartlip Reserve, John Elliott's Reserve, where the First Nations offices are located, the First Peoples offices are located, I see a language revolution taking place before our very eyes. Inspired by their longtime teacher and mentor, John Stolkworth, his sister Lindy, and their late father, Dave Elliott, who invented the Sanchothan alphabet, by the way, and elders like Ivan Morris and Helen Jack, the next generation of fluent Sanchothan speakers is rising up in our midst almost as if by some miracle. One of them, Helen Stoller Samantha, is here with us tonight. Sam, I want you to be sure to tell your mum how much we think of you guys and what you're doing there in the apprentice program. Samantha is a member of a group of young Saanich language warriors. I'm dubbing them that tonight. I don't know if they're going to like that, but I'm calling them Saanich language warriors who have seized onto their language with the most amazing passion. They've just opened their own language nest preschool. To do that, they renovated an old building by themselves and they turned it into a language haven. They're naming their children with Sanchothan names and demanding that those names be spelt correctly on their birth certificates. Last Monday night I attended a Looney Tooney at the Language Nest. If you don't know what a Looney Tooney is, turn to the nearest First Nations person to you and ask them what it is. As I sat with these young people and they shared the day's news, the most beautiful part of that experience, I could barely understand any of the conversation at all. These Saanich language warriors don't need English to chat anymore. The only time they used English that evening was as a courtesy to me. And most of them are not even 30 years old yet. Our gathering this week has inspired me to consider the amazing possibilities of the human spirit. We've been privileged to meet the 26-year-old inventor of a seeing prosthetic eye. We sat with the leader of a local team of innovators who've created voice-activated animation. We saw music videos created by young, I agree with Tyrone McNeil, these are young boys. These are not yet youth. Amazing 12 and 13-year-old boys. We saw a picture of a little Native American boy standing beside an old airplane. I swear I would never get in that airplane. I wonder how its wings stayed on. And he went from flying that off that res down there in the States to piloting the space shuttle to the International Space Station. With this kind of inspiration, we can only look up. I hope that through the many inspiring stories that we've heard this week, each of us will leave with a great idea and the passion and commitment to turn it into reality. So once again, I thank you for this recognition of the First Voices success story, and to so many of you who we owe for its story today. ITC. Thank you.
I just can't think of anyone who's more deserving of this. I know that you put your heart and your soul into absolutely everything you do. You're so committed to your work. And I remember that Vernon conference. I mean, that Vernon conference was the start of a lot, you're right. But without your determination and without your creativity and without your humbleness and your kindness and your generosity, we wouldn't be sitting here honoring you. And I am so lucky to have you as my friend. And I just value that so much. So thank you very much, and all the very, very best.
You honored a lot of people tonight in your speech, Peter, but I think to First Nations people who are so afraid of losing their language and have been so afraid for so long as time marches and we know we lose elders, and to know that with your courage to continue to stay the course in the face of all the challenges, and that, again, as Sue says, your quiet humility in doing that, and the steadfast perseverance to continue that path and to maintain that vision, that steadfastness of vision on doing, and who knows why, you know, on behalf of First Nations people, knowing that there's this desperate need and this desperate danger of losing these languages and these cultures and this ancient wisdom forever. But you continuing that course in spite of everything against it, and doing that on behalf of basically strangers, on behalf of people who often don't even realize that it's you who's behind First Voices. And again, with your great friends, John Elliott, and we got to see an old iMovie of you and John installing cable in a community, climbing ladders and pushing cable, drilling holes in windowsills and pushing cables into houses, and doing that for just the chance that maybe you could save a language or two or three. And now I can walk sometimes in Park Royal Mall and hear First Nations people speaking Squamish. At home I can hear young children, and I can say, "Kanum shkacha," and they'll say, "Did you call me a dog?" Because I just said, "What's up, dog?" to the young people. and it's happening throughout the province, as you're seeing in Saanich and in so many other areas, and largely because there is an opportunity. And by seeing the First Voices website there, it is evidence that those languages survive and are alive and will survive, and that there are other people throughout the province also working on saving and protecting and preserving these languages. It's not just people at home. There is a website now, and it's real. And that is evidence that there are other people who care and who are working tirelessly to preserve them as well. And that gives people hope. And more than that, it gives people faith that those languages will not go away, and that wisdom will not go away, and those cultures will be here for another 1,000 years or more. And you have played an instrumental part in that, Peter. And on behalf of anyone I can possibly speak on behalf of, I thank you, and I think we all owe you a great deal for your perseverance and your steadfastness and your courage. All my relations speak.
Excuse me, I'm going to get emotional here. It's really moving for me to have been here today, to have participated in this event, these two events. the announcement of the chat app, and knowing all of the work by many, many people, but inspired by Peter. And it's really important and moving for me that you would acknowledge and recognize and appreciate the work that Peter has done, has achieved on behalf of all of us. And I know that he doesn't do it alone. I know that his family has been there behind him. I met his mother a few months ago, and I was very interested in meeting her, because I wanted to know where Peter and how Peter came to be who he is. And so I spent the afternoon with her and realized that, you know, this remarkable woman brought into the world a number of people, and they all share the same zest for life, the same humility, and the quest to do the best that they can for people and for the land, for the environment. And that's all we can ask of ourselves. And so, Peter, I'm just so pleased and so proud to lead an organization that supports the work that you do. And John, I also acknowledge you, because I know that it was your partnership that has brought us here today. And I want to talk a little bit about the importance of allies, even though I don't particularly like that term because it's a militaristic term. But at the same time, it's a term that I think is important for us, because there are many people that we need to be able to do the work that we do, and to be able to accomplish the almost insurmountable mountains that we need to be able to go around, go over, and remove to meet our goals for our languages and for our land. And so thank you for being such a strong and powerful ally. Thank you. Good.
Well, thank you very much for all the work you've done. It's very inspiring. I think that app was up and running with the Stephen Point, it was very emotional for me to have our people start to incorporate this technology into our lives and to inspire our young people, like those young boys that were doing the presentation earlier. It really gives me a lot of hope for where our culture is going and what's possible for our culture. I think there's a lot of opportunities, there's a lot of remote communities, and for them to be connected is just an amazing thing. It creates a lot of connection, and that's one of the things that the residential school did, was to disconnect people from the language, from the culture, from the elders. And that connection through technology is bringing that back. You know, when people went home from residential schools, they couldn't communicate with their elders. And now this is coming back full circle. So the work that's being done is amazing. It's inspiring. I think we've got a long way to go. Lots of funding challenges. But I thank you all for coming. All this information sharing we're doing here, all the different applications we find in technology and how to incorporate them into looking after our lands, our families, our rights, keeping our culture alive. It's a lot of excitement, and I thank you all for coming out on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Technology Council and the Vice President of the Technology Council.